Hi, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Dark Media Effects. This is kind of a different twist on my usual podcast. This is the first episode I've done where it's been a video recording. So I'm really excited. I'm going to be joined by one of my really good friends. And thank you for tuning in. And if you enjoy this, go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube. I hope to do some more of these video ones. And then I'm also available on audio on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Breaker, and Anchor. So check me out on there. Thank you guys. Enjoy. I am here with my friend Taylor, and today we are going to be discussing the uses and gratification theory in terms of comparing it to like true crime. I have a couple really good documentaries that I want to bring up as well. The uses and gratification theory is one that's really easy to understand. It's instead of asking like what does media do to people, it's asking why do people seek out the media? What is it in the media that satisfies them? So to give you a more broad definition, I wrote it down because it basically is saying that media outlets compete with other media outlets too. That's another big part of it. So that's why when we're comparing this to true crime, you see a lot. Like there's been like how much, Taylor? How much like true crime shows have popped up?
So many. I mean, now you have like a whole dedicated network, like Investigation Discovery. That's it. Like any time of the day, you're like tuned in, and it's awesome. I love
Love
it.
it.
But it's super fascinating how much since like the older shows, like how much it's grown.
I think it's crazy too, because like I remember in the 90s when I was a kid growing up, and there was only like a handful of shows. We had like Forensic Files and like Unsolved Mysteries.
Yeah, and then of course you have the ones the more scripted, like Law and Order and stuff. I've always liked the more realistic ones personally, but you do have some of those. Like I feel like those were some for maybe different generations, the one that got people hooked.
Yeah, I honestly believe that it was CSI because I remember as soon as CSI came out, then all the other ones started coming out and it was just like one after the other after the other.
Right? It's so true. So true. You always have those ones that get everyone hooked. But it is crazy now. It's like you can't even count how many there is.
No. I mean, it's kind of cool, but I wonder if that has to do with I mean, I feel like it has to do with curiosity. Like maybe people are just curious about what's going on in other people's heads and why they would do the things that they do, but what happened in time to make that change so fast? Like why all of a sudden are people interested in this kind of stuff and they weren't interested in it back then? Or they were and the shows just weren't on. I don't know. It's kind of
I think that maybe possibly related. Like think about even media now, we're more so reporting on the negative things that happen. Maybe people are more aware of like actually things that truly happen.
that's true.
Maybe they're just more interested in it.
It could be the whole thing about people being like very like like in like the 50s and 60s and stuff, like you were not supposed to talk about that kind of stuff, like you were a straight psychopath if murder interested you, you know what I mean? So
Psycho.
it's like, yeah, so maybe people are like, hey, you know what, if I'm going to be psycho, then I'm going to do it watching HLN all day.
Right? Gosh. Awesome.
I have some like little like scratches here because I read this really good article about this actually. And it was called 12 Reasons We Love True Crime, and it was by Erin McCarthy, mentalfloss.com. And some of just like the top ones that I think are kind of interesting and I wanted to talk about is they said, and they had all these like psychologists and stuff weighing in on it. So it was really cool. They said it helps us feel more prepared. And that's one of the reasons. And I don't know how I feel about that reason because I don't think that's why I watch it.
It's interesting because I think that a lot of when you talk to people about crime shows, like the joke is it's like either I can commit a murder or I can solve it, you know? So I feel like it might be a little bit of a false sense of security because they see what like the potential is. And I think it creates awareness just in general, like, hey, be aware that this stuff can happen. Because I think if you put reality to it, you're a little more prepared.
I could see that because before we didn't really have reality TV. You know what I mean? And
Oh,
now we have like reality TV. And so maybe that's one of the reasons people tune in and watch this kind of stuff. But I've never heard anybody like, I've never heard anybody say that that's a reason, like that they're just like, well, I feel so much more prepared.
Like, as an actual security blanket, no. No.
No.
It's almost like how I said, like, a little bit more of a joking matter, like, I can
Yeah.
yeah, I'll be able to solve it or commit it.
I mean, I feel like, yeah, I feel like I probably know how to commit a good murder right now. Shouldn't be
Just don't
saying
tell our
that.
guys that.
I, one of the other reasons was that we can't look away from a train wreck, which I thought was actually really interesting because this explains a lot of the reason we watch things like Jersey Shore, for example.
Yes.
Like, such a train wreck, but you cannot look away. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like it's kind of the same thing with true crime, but I don't really get that same feeling as I get watching Jersey Shore, where it's just like, oh, you know, it's so bad. You're like, oh my God, these people, they're such a mess. This is so entertaining. But I don't like when I watch true crime, I don't think this is like really entertaining watching these people be stupid because that doesn't happen. So I don't know.
Agreed. I mean, I think that anybody, I mean, if you think about things that have happened, like in your community, say something like crime related happened, I feel like it's like similar feeling but different because you want to follow it, you know? Like there was a case here in Shasta County where a woman went missing and then all of a sudden it turned into like she popped up on Thanksgiving Day, but then like there was all this suspicion that maybe she did it on her own, like she faked it. So I get like that, like you can't turn away, like it kind of becomes addicting, but it's like a whole nother perspective compared to like Jersey Shore.
So then it probably has to do with just like media in a whole being obsessed with like the bad story. Have you noticed that? Like with news,
Absolutely.
it's like bad story and we chase the bad stories. We never chase the good stories. That's one of the things I actually learned in one of my classes was that um, feel good stories, like when you have the stories about people being like telling you how something made their life better, they actually do not stick in people's memory at all. Like it
Good.
doesn't stick. Yeah, but everything else does. Like any other thing, if you're trying to get a story, if you're trying to get something across to somebody, like don't use a special interest story because it, for some reason, it doesn't stick in people's minds, which is crazy to me. Because I would think if there's like somebody, I mean, think of like those Sarah McLachlan commercials.
Oh my goodness, yes.
You hear the song now and you're triggered. You're absolutely triggered. And so that's what I mean. I'm like, well, that's kind of special interest. So I feel like you would remember it more, but
I think people thrive on a little bit of the negativity. I mean, even if you think of gossip, like the people who tend to gossip, is it ever something that we're gossiping that's like positive?
no.
They want something negative to talk about. And maybe that comes back to the gratification. Maybe that's fulfilling something within
Yeah, that we're really, really fucking bored. That's what it's fulfilling.
now's the
Everybody's
time.
so bored.
Yes.
No, I mean, yeah, that's one of the things that's one of the things I've never really understood either is it's that, but that would hook back around to why people want to watch other people get brutally slaughtered, I guess. I don't one of the
It's
other ones that is on this list is you're actually frozen right now, Taylor. Get some better Wi-Fi.
dude, I have been struggling with this Wi-Fi. Did it unfreeze yet?
No, you're still frozen. Oh, there you are. I can see you.
Okay. Okay.
One of the other ones that I thought was actually I really liked this one. I think it's really interesting, but that's because I like evolutionary shit. It was the evolutionary benefit, which said that we evolved to pay attention to these things that could harm us. So that's one of the reasons that they think people are interested in watching true crime. So I actually think that this one is really cool because I do feel like it has some truth to it. I feel like I don't know if I'd say that we evolved it because like media seems way too new to be able to evolve for something like that. But I guess you can compare it to like watching something happen. I mean, like if you were like a Neanderthal and you saw somebody get murdered, or saw somebody be viciously attacked, which I'm sure happened all the time back then you were probably like, maybe I'm not going to go around that guy, you know? So
Or do
I
you
wonder if that's like the same kind of thing, like watch out for these kind of like weirdos.
it could be. It totally could be. I mean, I feel like media is new, but if you think about look how fast everything's changed, like how fast we get information now. And I remember like still like my first cell phone being like the little Nokia, and that's not really saying a lot. But if you think about technological advances,
Mhm.
media has evolved with it in a capacity, you know.
That's true. I mean, I just feel like I don't know if I would use this reason. I think this reason's really cool for just crime in general and murders in general. I don't know if I would use this reason connecting it to true crime because I don't feel like that's exactly the same thing. Because when you're watching a true crime show, it's more so like the detective side of it usually. Like they don't show you the full thing because if it was like a profile on the person who did it, like, oh, watch out for this type or whatever, then I
Absolutely.
would say maybe. But something like this where it's just like them trying to catch the guy, I don't know if that would fit into like an evolutionary reason.
Oh, I agree with that. I agree with that. You're definitely spot on that one. Yeah, because true crime.
I can't think of any reason. I mean, I can't think of any reason that would be evolutionary in my mind. I mean, I'm sure like I said, this was like a psychologist who said this, so I'm sure he's got some reasoning for it, but
Like a whole
I
like
just
laundry list, which would be interesting for like a
it
lot of
would be.
you because I'm sure
Yeah.
that like you said, there's not it's not for like no reason. So it would be interesting to know that laundry list of like what came to that conclusion, like what inspired that.
Yeah. I'll have to read it more. I really just gazed the article and like wrote down things that I thought were interesting.
Yeah,
So that's something I might have to go more into.
yeah, it's
Um,
definitely interesting. I'd be curious to know more on that too.
I'll send it to you.
Do it, girl.
Mm. And then the last one that I really thought was interesting on that list, I mean, there was 12 of them, but some of them were just kind of like, was that it gives us an adrenaline rush, which I think is fair.
I think that's fair too. I mean, when you are watching those, you're kind of just like mind blown. You know, you do get that sense of like, oh my gosh, is this even, this is real? Like, this actually happened. And I think that can become addicting. I mean, it's not going to be on that same level, but think about like, you know, certain sports or certain like hobbies people get into for that adrenaline rush. So I think it's like
Oh,
in capacity, that same thing.
absolutely. I would compare it even with um, like in the Roman times when they used to do like the fights in the Colosseum. Is that what it's
Yeah.
called? A Colosseum?
Yeah.
Okay. Like I don't know. Whatever the big round thing where they would fight people. I
Yeah,
think that
right.
that's comparative because or like people who go and watch MMA fights and stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a sense because when you're watching it, even if it's 10 seconds, that whole 10 seconds, you're like, oh my gosh, you know? So,
Mhm.
absolutely. And it is kind of that thing you can't turn away from that we were talking
Yeah.
about earlier.
A train wreck.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, not a comedic train wreck like we were talking about with Jersey Shore or anything, but the real life one. But absolutely.
Yeah. And I could see though, I could actually now this one I could tie into evolution because this one I could see how you would want to watch something go down like that. But the evolution one was just basically saying that we evolved what did it say? It says that we evolved to pay attention to things that could harm us. So that I don't get the same sense of that one. If that one would have said we evolved to be interested in and to consume or like watch stuff that could harm us, then that would be different. Because that's what I feel like is going on here. I feel like if you take an evolutionary look at it, I really feel like we would be interested in that. We want to see that. We've always like watched these big fights ensue and this stuff happen and I think it's really interesting and it evolutionarily would teach people how to react in certain situations. But I
Absolutely.
don't think that has to do with how the one about the evolutionary benefit says pay attention to things that could harm us. Maybe it's just the way it's worded.
I feel like it's maybe evolution is kind of a strong word because when I think of evolution, I really think of like how you were saying earlier, like it hasn't been around long enough. But then
Yeah,
when I think about like hundreds of years, like what we've like turned into, maybe it's something that we're taught
that
by
could be it.
like by media and by what we're consuming, that we are looking for those things that like went wrong, or you know, more of a negative story. How you were saying there's no positive story, I feel like it's something we're taught. It's what we're fed, so it's what we know, so we're almost comfortable with it.
Well, it's largely our culture too. I don't know if other cultures do this. That would be something very interesting to look into, is if other
Yes,
cultures are as interested in true crime as we are.
I agree, that would be
'Cause
really cool.
I don't know. I don't really think so. I mean, maybe if you have cultures that are a little bit more like us. I mean, I consider like Europe to be pretty similar to us.
That's literally the first country I thought of, and like a
Yeah.
little bit of a different culture. It would be interesting to see if that study was done there, and just seeing like, you know, what is the
Yeah.
difference, because we are so similar, but there's also so many difference in like even our day-to-day lives and like different values that they have versus like us in America. So it would be interesting to see if that's something they feed off of.
I would be interested even to if they did like a study, like a real study where they, like how me and you were talking earlier. I haven't brought it up yet, but the study about the uses and gratification.
Yeah,
If they did something like that somewhere like here and then did it somewhere else, like India or something,
right.
like what would be the differences? I feel like you'd be able to tell a lot from that.
Absolutely. And then even going to like some another country, you know, where they probably don't have as much freedom as in what they consume, but go to somewhere like China or an Asian country and just seeing what their that study
Oh
shows
yeah.
there too, just for this whole other perspective, because it's got to be, you know, almost night and day compared to us, I would imagine.
So since we're talking about this study, I'll just go ahead and say it because I put it in my notes anyway. And I know like if
Yeah,
people are listening, they're probably like, well, just say it.
just do it
Um,
already.
so this study it was consuming TV crime drama. Um, and it's the uses and gratification approach. It's in the American Communication Journal, and it was by Sharon Laricella. The study was really interesting in the results. So it basically said that it concluded that curiosity was the most influential aspect of the gratification. When they looked at all these different aspects, it was curiosity that was the number one. When they actually went into it thinking that it would be to escape reality.
Yeah,
And they all disagreed across the board that escaping reality was not the reason people watched it. They mostly watched it for curiosity. But here is the really cool thing: most of them watched it because they wanted to talk to others about it after, which I think is so true.
absolutely. I mean,
So
some
it's a social thing.
it totally is. And you're gonna be like, oh my God, you're never gonna believe what I saw. And it comes up in normal conversation. Like you go, not now in the current climate, but you go to dinner and something reminds you of it. You do. You want to talk about it and you're like, I'm gonna blow their minds with what I just saw. I've had those moments where I'm like, no one's gonna believe this. Like this really happened. I think that's completely accurate. And this curiosity.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some situations like that personally where I've been somewhere and it's probably not the right place or the right time, but I'm like, I was watching something and let me just tell you. And I feel like it like brings people together. It makes people feel like more that they're part of like almost like a club. I don't know, it's weird. It makes you feel like you're part of something more. Like I think people use it as like not an acceptance thing, but just as kind of a social tie to have to one another.
I agree. I agree. Because when you do find someone that is also interested and has that same curiosity, it's you click with them a little bit different, you know, because you're like, oh, shoot, like, let's talk about this. And those conversations, I feel like, too, and I know you're the same way because we're not very superficial people. We don't like superficial conversation. And I feel like that creates also a really good platform for something that's more in depth. You
Oh,
know,
definitely.
talking about something that's just absolutely crazy, and like you could go on and keep analyzing it, or
Yeah, and I think like okay, so have you seen the Chris Watts documentary on Netflix? It's called like American,
Chris
I think I wrote
Watts.
it down. American Horror Story.
So no.
What?
Okay, wait. Okay, tell me what this one's.
I should have made you watch it to prep for this because that is an insane documentary.
Is this the one? Is this like the newest one that's come out on Netflix?
Yeah, it's a couple months ago, I would say now, but it's Chris Watts who murdered his wife and his two little
No, I
babies,
know
and
that
he
one. Absolutely. I saw that on
yeah,
Investigation Discovery before they released the Netflix documentary. And even then, I was like, are you kidding me?
yeah.
Like, it's so disgusting and appalling, but you can't turn away.
No, absolutely not. And you have times where you like almost feel guilty about it. Like I've had times when I was watching it that I was like, holy shit, like this, I should not be like supporting this dude. Like I almost felt like it was a support thing.
And then when you find out, like, what made me feel a little bit weird is like, shortly after, people are posting and saying that he's getting like all these love letters in prison, and like girls are writing him, and it's like, I don't understand that part of it. So it kind of goes along with you feeling like when you're watching it going, what the heck? And then you see that happen after, like what clicks in their head to make them attracted to this guy?
What kind of a thing is that too? That needs like a name. What kind of a groupie is that? Like who just goes after these mass murderers that have Netflix documentaries? Like, okay. That's definitely on my check it list for a guy.
It's serious. Like, what the heck? Yeah, it blew my mind. Like, okay, let me sign up. Like, well, I guess he's in prison. Like, they're fine. They're protected. But I don't know. It was really weird. So it's is this some sort of erotica? I don't know. Like, but it seems really weird that people would take time to like reach out to him and show a romantic, like, put a romantic value on it.
Chicks just be desperate. That's what I'm telling you. They're desperate.
They are.
You have to be. You have to be. I mean,
Oh my goodness.
but this, okay, I'm gonna do a different podcast on this topic because this is a whole different thing, but there's a lot of like um controversial stuff, not controversial, let's say phenomenon
Yeah.
about that documentary. Like there's like times where you could see shadows and there's like
Yeah.
times where did you see that? And there's like times where you can hear like Shanna's voice saying stuff. I don't know, it's weird.
I saw like the clip, and I'm like, I try to play devil's advocate with a lot of stuff because I think that like makes a more well-rounded perspective, and it kind of opens your mind. So if I believe one thing, I try to put myself on the opposite side and try to debunk it, right? And so there was this video that popped up, and it could have been edited, but it's when they're in the living room talking to him, and it shows like down the hallway into the little girl's room.
The
They
little girls.
daughter. But I'm like, when it
Mhm.
maybe an investigator was in there looking around because the girls are missing too, trying to do their job and do their due diligence, but it makes you think a little bit.
If you guys don't know about this, Google it. It's crazy. There's like a ton, you probably don't even have to Google it. I mean, just like YouTube it. There's like this whole YouTube. I spent like a day, I swear, watching these YouTube videos with all the conspiracies from that documentary. It's
It's crazy.
crazy. Yeah.
It's
That's a whole different thing. I need to do a whole thing on that though, because
yeah,
that will take up a lot of my time.
and it totally relates to media and what we're consuming on what we think about it. So that's super
It's
interesting.
true. So the last thing that I wanted to like end this with is actually just talking about like why, oh wait, I did have another part. So basically in the definition of the uses and gratification theory, there is like these different reasons they give us why we would watch something or why we would be interested in watching something. And the main ones are knowledge, diversion, relaxation, social interactions, and escape. So if you had to like put it into your own mind, like the things that you love to watch the most, what would you say that you watch stuff for? I mean, we all watch it for different stuff. Okay, so true crime. What would you say that you watch true crime for?
So to be honest, I love true crime because I can almost turn it on like a podcast. So I can just turn it on and I can kind of do like multitask with it, but I feel like it's a little bit more of an escape because you're kind of focused on that and you kind of are a little bit more not in tune with maybe reality at the time.
Mm.
Um, or maybe diversion. I don't know, but that's just kind of what I do is I turn it on like a podcast and I listen and
Yeah.
I feel like it's knowledge too because I have like this I don't like to not know things. That's something I've learned about myself recently is if I don't know something, I want to research it and I want to understand, you know. So to me it's like fascinating, especially the human mind. I feel like you gain so much knowledge from it too. You're learning why and the how, and then you're learning about like the justice system. Maybe you're learning about the flaws or maybe you're learning about, you know, just the whole process. And I think that it's all valuable information just in general.
Yeah, I think yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like I kind of use it as like a background noise my
Yeah.
an average day. But then I get mad at myself because then I'll hear something really interesting going on in it and I'm like, shit, because then it's already said watched on the queue. And then the
Yeah.
next time you go to watch another episode, it's like behind one and you
Right.
miss it. But I feel a lot more, I don't know if it's diversion, but I feel a lot more like, yeah, I get a sense of escape from it, but I also get like this weird, I don't know how you explain it. It's almost like a curiosity, but it's more with the killer. Like I get kind of like this weird thing with the killer where it's not like, okay, I don't want to like write him letters in jail. I mean,
No,
not that. But like it's like this weird thing where I want to understand. Like I'm like so weird about what happened in your childhood that
absolutely.
made you like this. And that's one of the reasons that I like some of the more in-depth shows, like the ones that really go back and talk about the childhood. And you can kind of see why, but they don't do that much. They
They
only do that with certain like famous killers. I've never like seen a true crime show where they just do that for a regular crime, you know?
absolutely. I mean, I feel like you get a sense of almost like a sense of sorrow for like the criminal because you do
Yeah.
think about, like every once in a while I'm like, man, like you're saying, something bad had to have happened in your life where you are this way. Like something failed you or someone failed you, you know. So I think about that because mental health is crazy. I mean, if you think about all the crazy stuff that we're following in headlines, mental health is a huge part of that.
Yeah.
And it's often overlooked. So you think about that with the murderers. I totally agree. You're like, okay, what really went down?
Mhm. I get that way, and it's almost like a weird numbness that I feel towards the victim, and that's like a kind of a bad thing, except for the Chris Watts one. That one I was like, you killed baby girls. Not cool.
I loved watching that unfold.
Oh my gosh. But the ones where it's like just, like somebody just randomly killed like a woman that was walking to her car or something. Like I feel this weird almost numbness for it. And then I'm just like, what happened in this dude's life to where he had to do this?
He's
So it's
lashing.
almost like a zone thing. It's like I like zone in and I'm like, ooh, I want to know more about that. But they
Yeah,
never show it. So I have
never.
to Google.
Cliffhanger.
I know, right?
It's cliffhanger
Cliffhanger.
ever.
All right. Well, I guess that concludes our discussion on the uses and gratification theory. And I hope that those listening and tuning in kind of could understand it amongst all of our sidetracking. But thank you all for joining us, and I will see you guys next week.